Awesome, I bet I told you.
All right, everybody, we're gonna, we are now officially live. We've got a smaller crowd. Jeff, I know the Duke Power Foundation has something going on today to pull some electeds away. I know that. And then other people are on vacation. Beth Cash is on vacation and I know Sally Ashworth's on vacation.
The media this year.
The media is, we officially have the media here. So, whatever you say, Dave Yoakum is liable to put it in the paper. We do have Nicole Burton. She is on my board of directors. She also represents Novant Health, Huntersville Medical Center, and they are the presenting sponsor of Focus Friday. And so, Nicole, what's going on at Novant?
Good morning, Bill. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy Friday. It is a pleasure to greet everybody this morning on behalf of Mike Riley and Huntersville Medical Center. It is our honor to continue our support for Focus Friday as well. I am so excited to share with you guys that Novant Health Huntersville Medical Center will be celebrating 20 years of service to the Huntersville and Lake Norman community. There will be a community event to commemorate this milestone in October or November. More information will be coming out. This information will be provided to our community members and leaders via our Huntersville Medical Center hospital leadership team. I did speak with Mike last night, and as far as the day-to-day activities within the hospital, things are relatively status quo, and those are his words. We aren't seeing a significant number regarding COVID, and we are just continuing to provide remarkable service to our patients that we see on a daily basis. So thank you, Bill, on behalf of Huntersville Medical Center, Novant, for allowing me to give you a brief hospital update today.
Thank you, Nicole. And now I'll turn it over to Jeff Tart, the chair who is subbing for Beth Cashin, who is gallivanting around somewhere.
Somewhere. All right, well, this morning we have the fire chiefs from our three local communities of Cornelius, Davidson, and Huntersville. We appreciate you gentlemen being here. What I'm gonna do, rather than me pontificate on each of the three of you, and we truly are blessed to have you three gentlemen not only with us, but serving our communities. And so what I thought I'd do is let you guys introduce yourselves, and if you got any opening comments and thoughts to share. And so, Ryan, I'll let you go first if you would, sir.
Good morning, Ryan Monteith. I'm the fire chief for the town of Davidson. It's an honor to be here. Thanks to Jeff and Chamber for inviting us up here today. Being the fire chief in Davidson is my part-time job. I am a career firefighter with the city of Charlotte. I've been with the city of Charlotte for 24 years this year, and been with the town of Davidson since 2007.
All right.
Good morning, my name is Gary Barbie. I'm the fire chief for the town of Cornelius. Also, like Chief Monty, work for the Charlotte Fire Department full-time. This is also my part-time job. Two have been with Charlotte 24 years this year. Got my start in Cornelius as a junior firefighter with the volunteer fire department in 1994. So I'm coming up on 30 years here in the town of Cornelius. It doesn't feel like I'm even 30 years old, but you know, we got 30 years of service here already, so.
We're all getting old.
Yeah, we're all getting old, but yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Gary. Jim?
My name is Jim Patoli. I've lived in the town of Huntersville since 1989. I've served as the fire chief for an incorporation for 8 years, and now currently as the town's fire chief for the last, we'll call it 4 months. So we made a switch over from the incorporation to a town department this year, which has helped out the citizens very much. And town management, and the commissioners have done a great job doing what they've done to make this happen. I've also I've worked for the Charlotte Fire Department for 23 years, along with Huntersville, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, of course. Well, let's start, which will help kind of, particularly the viewers that'll be watching this later on, because we record it for our almost 1,000 members that have an opportunity to jump on at their leisure. But can you each take time, and Jim, we'll start with you, and same thing, to give us a little bit of an overview and the scope and size of your department, types of, and number of calls, that sort of thing that you do.
Sure. So Huntersville It's grown.
Tiny little place
Yeah,
now.
tiny little place.
Just as an example, when I moved here, Huntersville was 2,600 people. Now it's approaching 70.
Yes. Yeah, we're between 60 and 70,000 people, 62 square miles. You know, we're probably one of the only towns that have a McGuire nuclear power station in their backyard. We cover 2 lakes, major highways like 77 and 485. So we're talking close to 6,500 to 7,000 calls a year, serving our population. You know, we're challenged every day. We have to be prepared every day. So with the town as the town grows, the fire departments grow. We've had more fire stations, since I've been there. When we first started off, we had 2 fire stations. Now we're up to 4. Every day, those fire stations are manned with 18 people, 365 days a year, including holidays. So we're definitely one of the fastest growing towns and fire departments probably in the county.
Oh, great. Gary?
Yep, so, town of Cornelius, you know, along the same lines of what Natoli's talking about, everybody knows Cornelius has boomed. I'm not gonna say we're still booming. We boomed in the early 2000s. You know, much like, you know, Huntersville still got a lot of land left to grow.
Sure.
Cornelius really doesn't have that much, but we have started going up, which is a challenge. But as far as the Cornelius Fire Department goes, you know, we are, we're busy, not nearly as busy as Huntersville. We don't have as many people, 15 square miles, 34,000 people. We run about 3,500 calls a year out of 2 stations. We started making a transition in 2021 to add some full-time staffing. Prior to that, it was all part-time staffing and volunteers. 2021, we added full-time personnel, and we are slowly incrementing what we're calling a 15-year transition plan to switch over to a fully full-time fire department. So between now and 2035, we'll slowly add full-time firemen and keep our part-time firemen that are extremely well versed with lots of knowledge, lots of certifications, lots of experience. Our goal is to keep those guys around as long as we can and have the young guys that we're hiring as full-time firefighters learn from those guys and their experiences over the years. So our goal is to eventually build out at 17 firefighters on duty a day. Our goal currently is 12 firefighters a day with a combination of full-time and part-time people. So, you know, it's a slow process. Like I said, you know, we've got Lake Norman, that is a huge challenge. We've got 77. Thank God we don't have 45.
Now you still running lake patrol?
So we've got a marine program now. We went from, if you remember, in 2010, we bought our first true fire boat. We have added a second boat now, and also a inflatable boat for uses at Lake Davidson, Lake Cornelius over near the YMCA, because the big boats can't get in there. So, we have, Captain E.J. McCormick and, Lieutenant Bill Schick have taken our marine program and, soared. You know, so they're setting up, they do a Lake Norman Public Safety Boat School every year now in conjunction with Cornelius PD, that has pulled people from all over the state. We have people from Oak Island, here this year.
Wow.
So they're doing great things, and the regional cooperation between, you know, Iredell, Mecklenburg, Lincoln County, Catawba County, the law enforcement agencies, the fire agencies, is just tremendously grown from, you know, where we were 20 years ago. So we're much better prepared now, but that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, a lot of manpower, a lot of education. So that's one of our biggest challenges for Cornelius Fire Department.
Gotcha. Right.
So we can talk about our little haven of Davidson, which I like to call the suburb of Mount Horn and Cornelius. Obviously, Davidson has a much smaller population than what Huntersville and Cornelius does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our needs are any different than what those other 2 towns are. Again, we are a smaller department. We protect a smaller population. Geographically wise, we're about the same as far as protection goes as Cornelius. It's about 14.7, about 15 square miles is what we protect. It's what the District lines are. It's a very diverse protection district because you have that urban setting within downtown Davidson. Then we run all the way out the Highway 73 corridor to basically Poplar Tent Road, where we run automatic mutual aid with Huntersville on that end of the district. Davidson was the first department on the north end to start implementing full-time personnel, career personnel, and we had to do that out of necessity. One thing that Chief Tolan and Chief Barbie have at their advantage with their municipalities being larger, they have a much more robust applicant pool to be able to pull from the volunteer ranks. We didn't necessarily have that in Davidson over the years as the town grew. So we had to make a conscious decision, what's best for the residents, and what was best for the residents at that time was to start implementing career personnel. So in 2017, we hired our first career personnel, which for us was drivers. So their job was essentially to make sure that we had some consistency behind the seat of the apparatus driving the trucks. So we had staff.
You guys aren't gonna let me drive anymore?
Well, we can have a conversation about it, Jeff. 2017, we added our first round of drivers. In 2018, we received a SAFER grant from FEMA, which is the adequate staffing grant through FEMA. We added our second round of drivers. Also in 2019, when we opened up the doors to Fire Station 2 on Davidson Concord Road.
Beautiful facility, by the way.
Thank you. We hired full-time battalion chiefs to go coincide with that, and then we've transitioned to captains. So if you look at our daily staffing, we are staffed at 8 personnel. That's 4 personnel at Fire Station 1, 4 personnel at Fire Station 2. And so if you balance that out, that is split between 4 full-time personnel on shift a day and 4 part-time personnel per shift on day. One thing that I feel like that all 3 towns have been able to take advantage of is there's such a huge bench depth of qualified personnel that we're able to pull from, especially within that part-time rank structure. If you look predominantly at my membership roster, especially in the part-time ranks, they are career City of Charlotte, career Mooresville, career Concord firemen. So it's a huge benefit for the town because we're able to bring those individuals in that are already highly qualified, highly trained, and be able to give them some orientation phase and then put them on the apparatus and let them go to work. And so, we have some challenges again, just like all the other 2 towns do, but, we have some pretty aggressive strategic plans in place, that have identified some growth features for us. So, it's an exciting time on the north end. It can be a challenging time, but it's also going to be an exciting time for all 3 towns moving forward.
Can you guys take us through a little bit, break down, how many calls you got, maybe it's percentage wise as far as a number, that are actually responding to a fire? Versus, can you share some of the other things that you respond to? Because EMS, I know, is involved in some of that.
Yeah. So I think both chiefs would agree with this. So we consider our departments to be an all hazard approach. And what I mean by that is we're just not the fire department anymore. There's a lot of times that somebody is going to call 911, and when that dispatcher picks up the other end of the phone, they don't really know what the issue is and who needs to go to it, but they're going to get somebody there, and a lot of times that's the fire department. So it's that all hazard approach mentality. It's just not fires, for example. And if you look across the country, you talked about EMS versus fire. If you look historically across the United States, most departments will run, I would say, about a 60-40, 70-30 split as far as EMS calls versus strictly fire-based calls. One thing that is unique for us, and I think it's unique for Chief Barbie as well, our numbers in Davidson are actually a little bit more balanced. We're about a 50-50 split on distribution versus fire-based calls versus EMS calls. So that's one thing that is unique. But if you look across the country with fire departments that run EMS calls, it's going to be about a 60-40, 70-30 split as far as their distribution of responding to those calls.
How about the other 2 communities?
No, we're about the same. You know, we're probably in the 55% fire calls. Now, when you say fire call, like Brian said, it is a all hazard approach. So that's including, natural gas leaks, fire alarms. Something calls the fire alarm to go off. So we've got to go out there and treat that every time as if the building is on fire. If it's something triggered that alarm, whether it was just a malfunction, whether it was construction dust, whether it was smoke from a fire, something caused that fire alarm to go off. So you have to go out there for that. Carbon monoxide alarms. You remember however many years ago, Mecklenburg County required you to have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. Well, those things only last 7 to 10 years. So when they start beeping, You know, who do you call? 911, something's wrong, something, you know, my carbon monoxide alarm's going off. So typically we get there and it's just reached the end of its life and it's chirping to let you know that, but the layman's person doesn't understand
Sure.
until we get there and give them that brief little, you know, talk about it. So there's all kinds of things we go to. You know, there are your car fires, brush fires, house fires, apartment fires, you know, those are, you know, obviously we're probably in the 20 to 25 structure fires in the town of Cornelius every year. But then if there's one in Davidson, there's one in Huntersville, we're going to assist them as well. So
The fire prevention over the years has gotten better.
And how so?
Just look, take this room for as an example, you know, 30 years ago, it might not have sprinklers in it.
Mhm.
Well, apartment buildings are all built with sprinklers nowadays. So fire prevention got better. But the amount of fires that we actually go to have gotten less.
Mm.
Of course, as population goes up, we're gonna run more EMS calls, like they've been talking about. But fire prevention has led to the decline of fires, which is great. It means loss of property, loss of life is not there as much as it was back in years ago. But at the same time, buildings ain't as built as good, or structure ain't as built as good. So you see bigger fires. And when you take the South Park fire or something.
We're gonna
that-
talk about it a little bit, yeah.
Happened there. Now, that's a freak thing that happened, but a lot of times when apartment buildings catch on fire, it spreads so quick. And it all depends how fast 911 calls is in the middle of the night, and we have to get there just as fast to try to stop it from spreading to the next exposure.
How many, would you get, not guess, but do you have a sense, are EMS trained as well? In your
Crews,
or all of
100%.
100%, which, and how long does it take to get that certification, do you know?
it's about a semester to go to college.
Wow, so it's not like go do your 3-hour CPR class.
No, it literally is a semester in community college program.
Yeah, very, very cool. So we mentioned, because we've got a unique facility in our backyard, being McGuire, being a nuclear facility. How does that impact your staffing needs, your training needs, equipment needs?
So McGuire does an excellent job of getting, both towns together every year for a drill. So we have to drill there every year, just to understand how the layout of McGuire is. What are our capabilities and what do they want from us? You just don't walk into McGuire into a power plant and say, hey, we're here to, you know, train. It doesn't
We're here to
work like
help.
that. You couldn't get past the first yard of the check. So they to maintain their nuclear power license. They have drills with us every year that we attend. We attend like radioactive training, so we understand, hey, this is what's gonna happen as you get closer to this and the equipment that you're gonna have to wear. So, they do a great job. I mean, I've never complained about the Wire Nuclear Power Station. It's very unique to have in the towns. It would affect all of us if something ever happened.
Yeah,
So they have to be on their toes, and so do we at any given time.
well, you brought up the South Park fire. Actually, ironically, it was on the cover story this morning on the Charlotte Observer. They've been writing about it the last few weeks. We had the similar huge fire in Raleigh a few years ago on Jones Street. Just went down the apartment complexes. Give us the impact of that, because I know there's been some changes, I think, to the NFPA codes. And how does that impact you, one, trying to fight that kind of fire, because you guys all associated with Charlotte fire, and then the changes that came, if you can share, and how that impacts us even up here.
So I would just like to take a minute to ask those of you in the room, do you think the north end would be capable of handling a fire like that? The three towns, Huntersville, Davis, and Cornelius.
I'm biased, but it's so,
I'm biased, so
So-
yes, I
so-
would say yes.
yeah.
So that's crazy, because Charlotte Fire Department sent 5 alarm worth of companies to that fire.
Really,
Correct.
and I know we've had 2 firefighters die, or 2 people died in that fire.
Two civilians died in the fire, yes, and there was, we were very close to losing.
So I don't think we could handle something.
Well,
like
there's
this.
8 stations in the north end of the county,
Okay,
and what does 5 alarms of companies get you in the city?
There was over 170 personnel from Charlotte Fire Department. Holy moly.
So that's my biggest, so a lot of this has been a very big conversation topic since the South
Yeah.
Park fire happened. And, you know, people were like, well, what would you do? I was like, well, I mean, you have to get the people here So the first and foremost, the things we're going to do is try to keep everything from around it from burning.
Right.
Because you're not gonna put that fire out with the amount of people we have. But what we can do.
Control it.
Yeah, what we can do is protect everything around it until we can get enough people here to try to attack that fire. So that's a huge misconception. Just because you have a fire department doesn't mean that it's ready for everything. And you
It's
know,
not just skill set, it's bad.
right,
Correct.
and I don't know how big that building was square footage wise, but something that, you know, something that I think gets missed up here a lot is, and a lot of people talk about, I'm sure if you've been in downtown Cornelius, you've seen the venue, right on Main Street, it's a 5-story building, you know, it's an apartment building. A lot of people are gonna be like, man, like, does that building scare you? Like, yes, that building is going to be a challenge once it's finished. And, you know, all the fire protection systems are in place that Chief totally talked about. But that building is it's kind of simple when you think about it. You've got a center hallway, you've got apartments on both sides. Everybody's been in an apartment at some time in your life. Most of them are laid out pretty similarly, right? So, you know, you got a 30,000 square foot building there. I mean, that building's bigger, but the thing that scares me the most, Ryan has it, Jim has it, I have it, are these huge houses on the lake or on the golf course or in River Run. You know, these, 30,000 square foot single family dwellings, those are commercial buildings. And those are things that we face all the time. So, you know, a lot of people talk about the South Park Fire because it was.
They
I mean,
typically
it
don't have
was-
sprinkler systems.
No, they don't. There's no fire protection law that if you classify your residence as a single family dwelling, it's a single family dwelling, whether it's a 1,500 square foot house or 15,000 square foot house. So those fire protection features are not in those homes. So those are the things that scare me the most. Like I get South Park was a spectacular
Yeah.
one-time event. You know, I know it was the only time we've had a fire that size in my career that I can think of in Charlotte.
It's the only time I can remember where we sent resources from the northern end of the county to Charlotte to back it.
Yeah, we sent our ladder company to Station 1 in downtown Charlotte.
We sent our tower or our ladder company from Davidson to Fire Station 10 in Charlotte.
Yeah, because Charlotte didn't have anybody left. So like, I that's just something that I like to ask that now. Because people are like, oh, man, what would you do?
Well, just the talent and training, you assume.
Right. But I mean, you got 8 stations in the north end of the county, and you know,
Wow.
his Station 3 is way out like Eastfield Road, so like,
Right.
it's nowhere even close to here. So, but we can pull down from Mount Morn, like he talked about earlier, Mooresville's right up the road. But you know, it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take time to get those resources here to even begin to even think about tackling something like
So
that.
what's the tallest building you guys are able to actually address with the equipment that you currently have, the ladders and stuff?
So we've got Watermark across the street, and our ladder companies have reached the top of Watermark.
How many stories?
6 stories.
6 stories,
And Atrium, the new Atrium building, 6 stories.
the hospital.
I always tell the story because everybody always asks about ladder trucks.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, whether you're downtown Charlotte, in Huntersville, Cornelius, or in New York City, they're all the same height ladder trucks, 105
Right.
feet. So if you go to a hotel and you just want to stay at the Marriott, you better stay 7 floors or below, because they don't go,
They don't
they
go
don't
any
go any
higher.
further than that. I mean, when you say, well, it's 105 foot ladder. Well, by the time it puts on an angle and you got some cars parked there and they have to park away from it, you're good to about 7 floors. After that, you're really on your own. And, you know, that's why it's important that if you stay at a hotel or anything, know which way to get out, know where the escape routes are. I walk into this building, I don't know it, and I look for the exit signs myself. It's just a habit we might have as firefighters, but, you know, you'll see the same New York City ladder truck in Huntersville. They're all built by the 3 or 4 manufacturers. Everybody in the country goes to the same manufacturers to get their equipment. And, you know, but you're safe to about the 7th floor when it comes to the height of buildings.
Unless you got a parachute, right?
Yeah, unless you got a parachute. And something else that you should know is, as taxpayer and everything else, we all share equipment. You know, when Gary calls me for help, or Monteith calls up Huntersville for help, or the city of Charlotte comes up here, we don't sit there and write each other checks.
Right.
There's no fees like involved. If they send 40 firemen up here, or do we have a dive call or a dive team or anything that happens, it's all mutual aid agreements in the Mecklenburg County, so there's never a cost, you know, to get some extra help.
Sure. And are those formal agreements, what's the collaboration across and with Charlotte, you mentioned Concord, Mooresville?
Yeah, so I have automatic aid agreements, with Cornelius and Mount Morn. So those are my two primary departments that respond in Davidson to assist me on structural related incidents or the larger incidents where we know it's going to require some more help. I have mutual aid agreements in place with Chief Tolley to where there are certain areas within Davidson that I know I'm going to have to bring Huntersville in for that to assist, especially down that 73 corridor. Just like Chief Tolley has a mutual aid agreement with me to provide resources to him in certain areas such as Skybrook and some other areas down that 73 Poplar Tank corridor. You talked about Charlotte and the resource allocation that they can provide on the north end. One of the things that Charlotte provides to the northern end of the county is their special operations team. We talked about the dive team, for example, the hazmat team. So if we have an event in Davidson, for example, or Cornelius or Huntersville that requires the usage of a specialty certification to basically help mitigate that incident, whether it's a hazmat related event or a dive related call, that's where we're going to get those resources from Charlotte coming in, because they have the personnel that are qualified, and then they have those teams that are established that can come in and assist with that. So the county does have mutual aid agreements with the city of Charlotte regarding their response of their special operations team. So that's also a huge advantage to the north end, because when we talk about Charlotte, you know, a lot of us work there full time. So we have those relationships already established. And we're also talking about the 17th largest fire department in the United States. So that's a tremendous amount of resources that they can provide to the north end if needed, depending on the nature of the call, obviously. So that's a huge asset that we have that we can pull from as needed. Then just like Mooresville and Concord, they're close enough to where we can utilize them as well.
So take us through, I'm gonna put you guys on the spot. You can all say, let's just pass on that question. But preferences, challenges, positives, trade-offs, full-time versus VFD.
Yeah, I mean, it's the volunteer fire service is, I don't want to say dying, but the volunteer fire service is becoming a challenge across the nation. Because now, you know, when I came on the fire department,
Staffing wise or?
staffing, recruiting,
Right.
getting somebody to do something for free, you know, it's just not the way of the world anymore.
But aren't VFDs, Gary, didn't we pay them hourly by call?
So there was some of that, I mean,
Going on.
so that, this goes to show you were,
I'm old
You were-
school.
you were involved in the town politics years ago.
Right.
And back then it was a challenge. It was
Right.
becoming a challenge then, so we had to start offering incentives to bring people in to volunteer. You know, so as the call volume
So it
skyrockets.
used to be truly volunteer.
Oh, it was truly volunteer. In the town of Cornelius, we didn't pay anybody part-time wages until the year 2000. So,
Okay.
I mean, it was, if you were at home in the middle of the night and the fire pager went off, you had to get up out of your bed, get in your car, drive to the fire station, get in the fire truck, drive to the call, address the call, and then you went back home. And, you know, or you went back to the fire station, got back in your car, and went back home. Like there was, so that is one of the
Problems.
obviously. is
Response times, too.
Response times and not having a guaranteed amount of people there. You know, you know, there are studies out and you talked about NFPA earlier. NFPA 1710 says it takes 17 people to fight a fire in a 2,000 square foot house. That's why our goal was 17 people.
Wow.
So, you know, that's why our goal was 17 people per day, because Huntersville's super busy. You just heard totally, you know, Monteith is equally as busy as we are, so they may be on calls. And, you know, I want to make sure that the town of Cornelius has an adequate number of people just for the 2,000 square foot house. You know, that doesn't include multifamily dwellings or 28 people. You know, and you get into the high rise category and it's 48.
Yeah, it's a watermark. How many people would it take to?
To successfully mitigate water mark, probably in the 48 range. It's just below the high rise classification. So, but, you know, to get back to your original question, you know, the volunteer fire service across the nation is dying. You know, it's a generational change. You know, I mean, we're having trouble getting full-time or people to come into the fire service to work because it's a trade. You know, my philosophy is every college, every high school kid is pushed to go to college now. They're pushed to go to college, get a 4-year degree. You go spend all this money to get this degree, and when you come out of college, you wanna make
You can be a barista at Starbucks.
Yeah, but you know, every college kid comes out with this grandiose idea, they're gonna go work in a bank or finance or wherever and do whatever they're doing, marketing, whatever, they're gonna make $100,000 a year. Well, when I look at them and say, hey, man, I need somebody to come to this trade, this firefighting trade, and I'm gonna give you $50,000. It's hard to draw that. It's gotta be there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a challenge recruiting people to come work and get paid.
Well, it's
So you can
also,
only imagine the challenge to get somebody to come and say, hey, I wanna be a volunteer to go risk my life.
well, I was gonna say, and by the way, you potentially die doing this job.
Right. But another thing now, so I was gonna tell you earlier, when I turned 18 years old, we had what we call a live burn. It was a training fire. It was a structure that was gonna be demolished. So they let us fight fire. So I went there, they put me in gear. I'd been a fireman for 2 years. I'd never been to any class whatsoever, no structural firefighting class. Everything I learned from Cornelius Fire Department. They gave me this gear, they put me in an air pack, they gave me a hose, and they said, go in there and put that fire. And that was it. So we have grown past that. This was 1996, so we're way past that now, where now you have to be certified through the state of North Carolina as a firefighter before you're even allowed to participate in that training. So that alone is almost a year's worth of classes. So that is another challenge with the volunteer fire service.
So what percent of each of your forces are full-time versus volunteer, or actually, part-time from like Charlotte or Concord or wherever that has full-time?
So Huntersville just got into the full-time firefighters this year. Just January was our first hiring of 18 full-time firefighters, which puts about six on per shift. The other, add the 18 that are there every day, 6 of them are full-time and the rest are part-time. Like Monteith and Gary said, I mean, our part-time staff is fabulous. They're great. I mean, when they come from Charlotte, when they come from Concord, they're just changing their t-shirt, and we as a town and the citizens that they serve, these are highly trained professional people that are on there. So we definitely don't want to get rid of the part-timers. The volunteer part has gone away for us, being part of the town. We just don't have the volunteers. We want to find them. No one wants to go to school, like Gary said. And everybody's trained in EMS and fire. So it's definitely but knowing as the fire chief and knowing as a town citizen that there are people there now, and you don't have to worry about them driving from their house to that call.
Right.
Knowing that they're gonna be out the door within a minute time and maybe a 6-minute drive to your home, that takes a lot of pressure off of us and feels good as a town employee and a citizen that lives there. The fire service is ready. Those people are ready to go.
One thing that I know the three of us are monitoring closely, you talk about the volunteer versus career distribution.
Sure.
Back to Gary's point, we're seeing less and less across the country of people wanting to volunteer, but we're paying very close attention right now to the new OSHA standard that is probably going to get approved and published.
Which is,
So it is the original fire brigade standard that was published by OSHA in, I want to say, the early 70s. And it was essentially for industrial fire brigade, the industrial fire brigade firefighting standard. And it was outdated. Some changes needed to be made. So the federal administration went back through this year and started making some changes. Well, what they did is a lot of these NFPA standards that we talk about, I think everybody knows.
like 300 of them or something.
But I think everybody that's been involved in local municipalities understand when the fire chief gets up there and talks about NFPA standards, they're not necessarily law, they're a consensus standard. And that's what we do try to, steer our departments down that road of, hey, we understand it's not law, but these are consensus standards. It's a guideline for us to follow in the event. What we are seeing now is with this new OSHA standard that should be approved this summer, they're actually going to take about 17 of these NFPA standards and adopt this into law with OSHA. So it may not necessarily have a negative effect on Huntersville or Cornelius or Davidson, but if we talk truly about the true volunteer fire departments across the state, I don't know how they're going to be able to survive. To because there's gonna be some fiscal limitations to
Sure.
what they may have to implement to be able to operate. For example, all three departments perform annual physicals on our personnel every year. Make sure that everybody is fit for duty and that we're not missing anything from the health and safety side of business with our personnel. There are some departments that can't afford that, to be able to send their personnel for annual physicals. And so that's a limitation that I may see. That's coming into law. That will be part of this new OSHA standard. So we're paying close attention to that to see what that's gonna look like at the end of the day. But this new OSHA standard, I can see having a very direct correlation to either departments that are in that volunteer mode start shifting to a career mode, or there may be some departments that just have to outsource to somebody else because they just don't have the means to be able to, you know, run the department by that standard.
Yeah, a lot of budget challenges.
Yes.
So we've talked about it and around it a bunch. Take us through certification, things you are required to do, and training, both not just new recruits, as we're talking about coming out, but also how do you stay updated, and is that done? Can you do all that locally? Do you send people away? Do you do that in shared exercises, as you said, like with Charlotte and stuff? And how does Charlotte say? Yeah, I mean, you're all Charlotte. How do they train and keep all their folks up to speed?
You wanna talk?
Used to be a training officer.
Yeah. So state of North Carolina requires that, fire departments across the state have to provide 36 hours of training to their membership
Every year?
every year. So that's the minimum number. I, as the fire chief of Davidson, have to ensure that 36 hours of training each year are being delivered to the membership roster at Davidson. That's career personnel or part-time personnel.
You've gotta take at least a week out of your schedule to train.
And depending on how we schedule it,
Right.
yes. Now, I will tell you, we go above and beyond that, just like the other two departments do as well. You know, we've been very fortunate to be able to stand up in front of the elected board in the town of Davidson and say, hey, we've reduced our ISO number, you know, from a class 5 in the town to a class 2, just like Chief Tatoli has, and just like Chief Barbie has been able to in Cornelius as well. There are some training standards that are applicable in getting that ISO score lowered. So all three departments meet the minimum, but I will also tell you that all three departments go well and above the minimum as well. We are able to, per the ISO standard, be able to count some of these training hours that Charlotte is providing for our part-time staff. So we can utilize some of that, but there's still some training that we have to apply for the membership roster on an annual basis. We talked about EMS. They're required to have 24 hours of EMS Con Ed every year to maintain their
36.
to maintain their EMT certification. They are required to maintain 12 hours of officer development training for our officers. They are required to maintain 8 hours of hazmat training. They are required to maintain 8 hours of driver operator training. So there are a lot of buckets that are in this entire training beast that we like to call it, that we have to maintain on an annual basis. I know I can speak for it. All three departments are doing something on a daily basis as
You
far as.
guys like have training coordinators, or how do you keep track of all that?
I'll let you talk about that.
So, you know, Ryan hit on it a minute ago, we get to use, when you talk about ISO score, which, you know, directly affects everybody's fire insurance premium. So the lower the score, the better. So we've all got twos. You know, ISO says you have to have 192 hours of company training a year. And that's you, Jeff Tart, individually, you've got to participate in 192 hours of fire training. But an additional 18 of that has to be spent at a fire academy somewhere on in what they call a certified facility, which is a 3-story training tower. You know,
Then they burn things around you at
Correct.
line.
which we don't have in the north end, by the way. So for our guys to get that training, they have to travel. So like I can use my Charlotte.
Where's the closest one?
South Iredale has one, the town of Harrisburg has one, the Charlotte Fire Training Academy, Morgan Fire Department has one.
So there are a few, but
We are pushing, us three collectively are pushing CPCC, Maracus campus. There's 5 acres there. We've all three been in talks with them. They are supposed to be building a fire training center there, sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. They've just started the preliminary design talks. We are all pushing because we need that, 3 and 5 miles down the road and right in his first two areas.
So all need to call Candy Dedemeyer and put the word in, right?
Yes, that would be fantastic. But, so, what I was saying is, we get to use some of our training from Charlotte. So like the 192 hours of company training time, I can use half of my Charlotte time as a Cornelius fireman. But the challenge comes into where, we've got 12 full-time firefighters that only work for the Cornelius Fire Department.
Sure.
So we hired a training captain last year to coordinate that and make sure that those guys are getting the training hours they need. So I actually have a training captain on the part-time side who handled training for us for years. We hired Eric Earnhardt from the city of Wilmington.
Mhm.
He moved here. He is now our training captain for the whole fire department. But his main goal is to take care of those 12 full-time firemen and make sure they're getting their 18 hours at the training academy somewhere, making sure they're getting their 24 hours of EMS time, making sure they're getting their driver operator time, and trying to reach that 192 hour of company training time. So there's a lot of training that goes on. There's not a lot of down anymore, because you're constantly pushing.
So besides what we've all watched and seen on like Chicago Fire on TV, what kind of training is actually involved? What are folks learning other than hand you a hose and run
Yeah,
the
right.
fire, right?
It's a multitude of things. So there's all kinds of basic functions
Yeah.
on the fire ground that have to be met. That's why you need 17 people. There's gotta be a driver operator. There's gotta be an incident commander who's basically the head coach out there calling all the shots. There's gotta be 2 guys that take a hose line in to put the fire out. There's gotta be 2 more guys on another hose line in case something happens to those guys. There's gotta be a team of 4 guys out there that are the rapid intervention team that are in case those firemen go in there and they're fighting fire and something happened, these guys go in and rescue. There's gotta be a team of 2 to 4 people to go in and search the building, and make sure there's no occupants inside. There's gotta be, a team of 2 people to go on the roof and cut a hole to ventilate the structure and get all the superheated gases and smoke out. It makes it more tenable for the firemen, makes it easier for the firemen to find the fire, and makes it more tenable for the victims that may be inside. So there's all these things that have to go on, and you've got to train on each and every one of them, and you're expected to be proficient at each and every.
So how do you guys, okay, got the quarterback calling the plays. What happens when you're pulling folks from other forces or yourselves when you show up? How do you know who's doing what role where? It's when it's a combined effort.
When it's combined efforts, it's like, what they're both talking about, it's almost like a pig.
Yeah,
You're trained to jack that car up, you're trained to pull that wheel off, but everybody's trained the same. Everybody, if you go down, I know what you want to do for good happens, when something happens to you. And that's what the whole training is about, is that everybody be trained the same. Now, some people are always better at certain things than others. He has a boat operator that's a US Coast Guard certified, he loves fireboats. I'm not very good at fireboats, but we have other people that can do the job in case something happens. And that's why everybody that goes to these training classes and comes out with certification. We know they've been through ventilation training, we know they've been through hose line training, we've been through extrication training that we probably go to every day, cutting people out of college. So it's a very important that if something happens, the other person steps up and knows what's going on and knows how to do that person's job.
As far as the coordinating piece though,
Yeah.
you see an engine and a ladder, right? So you've heard of engine trucks.
Sure.
The ladder trucks. So,
There are the parades and.
yeah, correct. So when you pull up on an engine company, that truck has a basic function. Is to take the hose line inside, put the fire out, or its water supply to hook up to the fire hydrant. When you pull up on a ladder company, there's 2 basic functions you're expected to perform if you're riding that truck. You're either gonna be doing ventilation, or you're gonna go inside and search for victims, or help the hose team, try to find the fire. So as far as the coordinating side, like if I know Brian's people pull up in their engine company or their ladder, I know they're in that mindset. And that truck is equipped to do those things. So those are the functions that I would have his guys do when they come to these.
Gotcha. Well, keep in mind, we're recording this, and 2 things I'd like you guys to take a little bit.
And a reporter in the room.
And a reporting room. What I'd like you guys to do, and we use a little bit of an educational piece, talk about what you recommend for businesses, and we've got a variety of different types, particularly Huntersville. I mean, for manufacturing to what have you, small business, store retail. And then talk about the residential. What are the things you recommend to keep their businesses or homes safe in case of a fire, and what should they do? besides getting the garden hose and trying to fight it themselves?
Don't really recommend that.
Yeah. You know, the biggest thing when it comes to commercial buildings is your people. Is making sure that when the fire alarm goes off, they will practice going out, because they have no idea if there's a fire or not. So if we practice getting out safely and have a meeting place, and there's a manager out there that says, hey, Joe's here, Laura's here, Tim's here.
Account for everybody.
Accountability is huge, because when we arrive, that's the first thing we're thinking of, life safety. So we wanna go inside, and if there's somebody missing, we're gonna try to find them. But if you could tell us that, hey, all my people are outside, that is huge in a commercial structure. And it's important even with residential. I mean, a family of 6 or 8, and you make sure the kids are inside, hey, if somebody's missing, we're gonna try our best. We're gonna risk our lives to go save a life, but knowing where those kids are is very important. Or, hey, the last time I seen this person in my building, she was at the top floor in the bathroom. Maybe she got scared, maybe she's still in there, maybe he's still in there. So accountability is huge. You know, we always say practice. You know, we practice all the time on the techniques and the strategies that we're gonna use, and that's very important for even for commercial structures and residential.
So like a fire drill, have your company go to the fire
Yeah, and
drill.
that's why the schools do it. So
Right, we do it as kids,
you know,
right?
when there's 2,000 kids in North Mac High School or Hopewell High School or any one of the high schools, they gotta be outside. We gotta make sure they're outside, because you know, that's the most important thing. But they practice monthly. And I'm not saying a business needs to practice monthly, but they need to at least have an evacuation plan and accountability system that puts put in place.
And if you're unsure on how to do that for any of the business owners, Mecklenburg County Fire Marshal's Office has fire and life safety educators. So you can call them and they will come to your business. They'll do an inspection, not a true inspection, but they can walk around and tell you if they see anything that's unsafe on the fire side. They can run the fire drills for you. They can even teach fire extinguisher classes. You know, especially in the manufacturing realm, it is good for your people to know how to use a fire extinguisher.
And which kind, depending on the type of fire, whether it's gas,
100%,
oil, whatever.
So you sat through a class.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, the fire marshal's office is a huge resource that we have, for the entire county.
So for most businesses where they have requirements for an apartment building, sprinklers and stuff, do they have requirements on how many fire extinguishers and how far and all that?
They do.
So, and in residential, you recommend keeping?
Yeah, so we talk about fire prevention, right? That's that's the term that you use, Jeff, was fire prevention. The terminology has shifted a little bit over the years. We call it community risk reduction now. That's one of the big terms that we like to use now, because it's so involved now. What I will tell you is, it may not be the sexiest terminology out there, but what we do from that community risk reduction is the most important thing we do for the citizens. It's not necessarily that, yes, the citizens expect us to be able to get on the trucks and out the doors as quickly as we can and fix their problem. But it's what we do on the front end of that to try to even prevent that emergency from even happening to begin with. So that's why it's so important. I'll give you an example. There's 2 initiatives that we are working for with the Davidson Fire Department in the town of Davidson right now on that community risk reduction piece. We have a program called Community Connect, which Chief Tolley and both Chief Barbie have access to as well. And I think Cornelius is pretty heavily involved in that as well. And it allows the community members for those 3 towns to be able to go in and put certain information about their residents, for example. Let's say that they have an elderly set of parents that live with them that require 24/7 medical care. That allows that property owner to put that information into the system. And then if we're responding at 2:30 in the morning, as that call comes in, the officers on the truck can see that information. Or my kids live in the bedroom right above the garage. That information can be populated as well. So that's one thing that we're pushing pretty heavily. The second thing we're pushing pretty heavily is the residential Knox box. So if you look around, and there may be one on this building too, I didn't see it when I walked in, but per the fire code in North Carolina, there are a lot of commercial and business settings that are required to have what we call a Knox box. So it's basically a secure key vault for access for the fire departments during emergencies. So long story, really, to explain it better, if a property is required to have a fire alarm or a sprinkler system, they're required to have a Knox box for quick access for the fire department.
Those keys, so you can get in.
Keys to get in.
Kind of
It
like
is-
brokers.
Yes. It is
Yes.
not required for the fire code for residential, single family residential. However, they do make a residential Knox box where a homeowner can purchase that Knox box and either they can mount it on the outside of the wall of their,
You register it with fire department?
they register it through us, through the town of Davidson. And what it does is at 2:30 in the morning, if it is a medical call and we're trying to gain access, or if the individual can't come to the door, it allows us quicker access into the building itself. Yes, we're gonna get into that structure one way or
If you
the other.
need, yeah.
But-
Right.
We would love to be able to get in there quickly without causing any undue damage to that individual's
Sure.
property as well. So that's two of the initiatives that we're kind of pushing just to help help our citizens out in Davidson as far as giving them some other options that's providing us quicker access.
Couple things as we're getting close to the end of our time. We see these things advertised on TV and curious just, are they useful or not? One is for two-story homes, ladders in bedrooms to get out. Is that a valued asset, something smart to do, or is it never see them used? And the other is these blankets, you know, for stove fires or, you know, the bigger ones for some external, do those things work?
As long as you're smothering the fire
Yeah,
and you're not pouring water on grease,
yeah,
those things will help.
cutting down oxygen to the
Correct.
fuel.
You know, obviously, I've got a fire extinguisher in my garage right outside of where my kitchen is.
Yeah,
And all of my children know where it's at. They know how to use it.
yeah, you keep one under the sink, different places, one
So,
so,
and under the sink may not be the best spot,
right?
because I don't know how close your sink is to your
Backyard,
oven or your stove.
right, right.
But that's where your fire is gonna be, right?
Gotcha.
So, it needs to be somewhere away from that, so you can run out of the danger area and get it and come back. So
Well, it's pretty far from our, wood fire that we burn in the pit in the inside.
Yeah, right. But, those things, I would definitely recommend if you lived on a second, even some of the houses around here, third, fourth story. If you had some kind of ladder, escape ladder that you could hook, now, you need to practice it. Don't just put it in there in the box and never touch it again. It needs to be something that you've shown your children or you yourself know how to use to get out.
Blankets are probably the newest technology out there for fire. We always try to say above the greatest times of what's going on in the fire world with these lithium batteries now.
Yeah,
I mean, the cars that we can't put out because of lithium batteries, the blankets are a new generation of, hey, let's smother it with this blanket and see if it'll put it out. So blankets are becoming really, real popular. You look at high rises, New York City has been having a lot of problems with lithium batteries on multiple floors. You can't bring the fire hoses up there and just
right.
put it out. So they're trying to figure out ways to get the lithium battery down to the bottom where they can smother it with water or a blanket.
Interesting. Well, one last thing then, can you share your top priority or priorities for the coming year? For each department?
Well, for Davidson, it's continuing to look at our staffing model to make sure that it makes sense. Currently it is sustainable, but there's gonna come a point, whether it's next year, the year after that, where we may start seeing some part-time membership kind of leave. So what does that look like? Do we start reallocating some of those positions more to that full-time personnel? I can tell you, it takes me 11.3 part-time individuals to replicate one full-time employee. So that's a lot of them, that's a lot of part-time employees that I have to have on staff to be able just to replicate one full-time employee. So we're looking at that. Back in 2022, the Davidson Fire Department conducted, our 5-year comprehensive strategic plan. And we also participated in our community risk analysis and standards of cover. So that was a very, in-depth, report that allowed us to be able to take a hard look at what we're doing in Davidson, what's working right, where we need to make some improvements at, and what's not working. And so we're really, over the next 5 years, we're really taking a deep dive into that report. And for example, a lot of our budget requests for the fiscal year are going to be tied directly to those two major reports, because we have a report that outlines where some of our successes are and where our deficiencies are. So for me and Davidson and for my staff, it is maintaining that good, effective service that we're providing citizens of Davidson, but also continuing to grow the department out as well. We know that we have outgrown our current location at Fire Station 1. For the ones that remember, we were stuck in the basement of our town hall. We have outgrown that space. So what does the future of new Station 1 look like in Davidson? That's coming up. That's a discussion topic. So we're excited about that, but there's going to be a lot of moving pieces over the next couple of years that coincide with that. So for us, it's maintaining where we're at, but continue to look forward and continue to see where we can make improvements, not only for the department, but for that service level we're providing citizens as well.
Okay, I think we're much along the same boat. Over the next year, we've requested to hire 6 more full-time firefighters. Because, just what Ryan just said, the part-time staffing, being able to retain them, and being able to recruit more part-time staffing is becoming a challenge. As far as we go, with the number of part-time staff we have, I need all of them to average working 9 shifts a month to fill all of our part-time spots. Right now, we're averaging about 7 a month. So we fall short in a couple of those areas. So that is what justified the need for additional full-time firefighters. So we did not the same study that they did, but in 2019, the Center for Public Safety Management came in and looked at the fire service overall in the town of Cornelius and said that our current part-time staffing model that we were using then was not sustainable. So that's what set us on this path for the full-time transition plan. They wanted us to do it in 3 years. Well, actually, I'll take it back. They wanted us to do it in 5 years. And we were going to go from having a $1.5 million budget to $3.5 million in salaries alone. So obviously that's a shock to the taxpayers. And, that's a hard sell for politicians. That's a hard sell for taxpayers. So that's why we elected to do it in a slow incremental 5-year or 15-year plan. Long story short, this year, be able to attract and recruit 6 good, solid full-time firefighters. We also applied for a SAFER grant for 6 additional. I don't know if we'll get that or not. So that will bolster our full-time staff to where 24/7, these guys are required to be on duty in the town of Cornelius. And if we've got the part-time staffing is not available that day, we've got full-time people there in those places. So that's our number one goal, is to keep working with the town board and the town staff to justify and show them, hey, these are our real data. This is our real facts. This is what's driving us to do this. And it supports, the need that we presented to them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I try to look at it more of a 5-year, 10-year plan to work with town management. The biggest thing is planning. We're working with the planning department and town management to see where the growth is in Huntsville, being 62 square miles. Where's the next station going to be built? Is there improvements that need to be made to the current stations to bring them up to where they need to be for the future? So planning for the fire department is, definitely stations, making sure the apparatus are top notch. We gotta protect the citizens. What are we building? We're building 6-story buildings, we're building, 20,000 square foot houses. So we gotta have the apparatus to go into those stations, obviously to make sure that they're on the roads when they need to be. It's not always about buying the cheapest stuff, or the most expensive, but what is going to suit us as a town of Huntsville. And if you can't have both of those, you gotta have manpower. You can have the best fire stations, you can have the best apparatus, but if you don't have the people to get out in those trucks, we call it the butts in the seats, you don't have anything. You don't have a fire. So it's very important, and we've started this transition of starting, with our first 18 full-time people, and we'll grow every year. It doesn't have to happen all at once. It can be done slowly. No one wants to take on that just giant tax burden, we see what that's gonna cost. But we gotta have the butts in the seats to get those trucks out the door when the 911 calls.
Well, gentlemen, it is absolutely an honor and privilege to have you join us. Just so you know, you 3, I'm in awe of. I mean, what you guys do every day. I mean, you get up, and I don't think people recognize it. You get up, you go out the door. You're not going to a job, you're going to a career, you're going out to not just save a physical structure, you're out to save lives potentially. And you put your life, literally, you don't know, your family doesn't know on a given day, you might not be coming home. And it is incredible that you guys have dedicated your careers to serving others and in our communities, and we're blessed to have you. Thank you for being here. Really. Thank you. All right, Bill, back to you.
Want to thank Nicole for joining us and Novant Health Huntersville Medical Center, Dave Yoakum. Mrs. A. Cornelius today for being a sponsor of this, and thank you guys for showing up today and being a part of this.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.